Hello, and welcome to Autistic FM. My name is Haje. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm your host on this journey. You can subscribe to Autistic FM wherever you get your podcasts, and you can find the transcripts and additional information about each episode on autistic.fm. In this episode of the podcast, I'm joined by a guest who spent over a decade helping students with diverse abilities, including autistic individuals, develop their gross motor skills and navigate physical education with confidence and creativity. We also share some tips for how to encourage autistic kids to partake in more physical exercise. Also, a quick heads up. About halfway through the interview, I had an equipment failure. Happens to the best of us. We had to re-record the second half of the interview a few weeks later. The audio quality throughout is a bit wonky, and I guess at least I learned some stuff. Apologies again. I'll try to do better in the future. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. Would you start by sharing your name and pronouns, please?
Yes. I'm Darcy von Borstel. Pronouns are she, her.
Wonderful. And where in the world are you?
I am in Sacramento, California.
And so am I, because this is the first one we're recording in person. Super
welcome.
Exciting. Well, the reason I invited you on the podcast is that I know you have a whole bunch of really interesting experience. Would you tell me a little bit about what you do for a living and how that's relevant to this podcast?
Yes. So I am an adapted physical education specialist. And that means that I work with students with disabilities to help them improve their gross motor function.
Mm-hmm.
And I can work with students ages 3 through 22. Currently, I have ages about 4 through 17. And I work at a whole bunch of different school sites, 8 right now, and have about 35 to 40 kids that I work with.
And do you work with people who are neurodivergent as well?
Yes, I work with students who have intellectual disabilities. I work with students who have physical disabilities. I work with students who have any combination anywhere in between. I work with any student who has a gross motor delay. And I think I probably should define gross motor because
I think that is helpful.
That is one of my most familiar terms, and most people look at me like, what is that? So gross motor is the large movements that we do. As an adapted PE specialist, I focus on locomotor skills, which are the way that we get from one place to another. So think of running, walking, jumping, hopping, skipping, slide, gallop, and object control skills. And so that's the way that we use things like a bat or a tennis racket or a ball. So kicking, striking, catching, throwing, a lot of sports-related skills. I also look at balance because it plays into everything we do in all of those areas. And depending on the student, I may be looking at wheelchair skills and how a student navigates with a wheelchair if they're unable to demonstrate locomotor movements.
So you said gross motor skills. I've also heard of the term fine motor skills. What are those and how are they different?
So fine motor skills are small movements. So think about writing, cutting with scissors. Fine motor generally is what we do with our hands. And the specialist that works with fine motor skills is the occupational therapist. So in special ed, we have a variety of related services to help meet the needs of our students. Adapted PE is one of them. Occupational therapy is another. Physical therapy, speech and language therapy, vision, psychology, whatever the students need, we have service providers.
Interesting. And so when it comes to autism and neurodivergence specifically, I know that that's a subset of all the things you do. But the reason why I wanted to talk to you is, can you tell me a little bit about what, if any, unique needs people with neurodivergences have compared to people who have, say, a physical disability?
So that's a very interesting part of my job, because when a student has a really obvious physical disability, it can be easier. It isn't always, but it can be easier to identify what the struggle is, what the challenge is that they're having with their gross motor skills. Really obvious, a student in a wheelchair.
Right.
And I think we can all imagine that they may not be able to do the locomotor skills, and the object control skills are limited because they have this structure that they're sitting in, and they aren't able to step in opposition, and they aren't able to use their whole body for rotation of a throw. And so there's a lot of limitations that are obvious. We can see it, it's visual, but not all disabilities are visual. And when you look at the neurodivergent disabilities or different abilities, which I tend to refer to them as when I'm talking to my students, you can't see those. They're not obvious. So you don't know what a student is able to do or not do. And so for each student, it's so important to just offer them as many different options for movement as possible to allow them to show you what it is that they can do so that you can also see the things that they need to work on.
I just want to kind of double click on something for a moment that you just mentioned. You referred to autistic folks as having disabilities, and then you kind of caught yourselves like, oh, it's different ability or what have you. If I understand correctly, like in order to get your help, somebody needs to have a disability. But so that's like the legal side of things and the way the school looks at it. But a lot of people who are neurodivergent or autistic don't necessarily see it as a disability. They see it as a neurodivergence or what have you, right? Like, hey, this is something I am, not something I have. Do you see evolution in how people are thinking and talking about autism in a school context?
That is a really good question and a really good analogy of what just happened in my conversation, because you heard me say a disability and then self-correct to different ability. And you were spot on. In order for them to have an IEP or a 504, they have to have a diagnosis. And when they have a diagnosis, we tend to call it a disability. And I don't want my students to think of themselves as having a disability. And so I always refer to them as just having a different ability. And I find that there is just a sweetness that occurs when I use that terminology. Mm-hmm. They appreciate being seen as equal, as not less than, and different ability doesn't mean it's not a measurement. It's just saying we have variations.
My curiosity was whether you've seen that evolve and change over the years.
Yes.
So how long have you been doing this? That might be a good place to start.
I started teaching high school PE in 2001 and started in adapted PE 12 years ago. And I didn't know that was where I wanted to be. In fact, I thought it was where I didn't want to be. And as soon as I started working with these students, I just absolutely fell in love with it. Because for me, working with fundamental movement skills is so much more important than sports skills. Mm. And there's a big emphasis in high school PE on sports. And the kids that are really good at sports do really well at PE. And the kids who aren't good at sports struggle with PE and don't like it. And in adapted PE, I get to work with kids exactly where they are, on the movement skills that they can do and they can't do. And I get to really understand what's driving them. So you ask about a change or a shift in the way that we're looking at neurodivergence and autism. And I hesitate because a part of me says, I've absolutely had that shift myself. And I know lots of people who have. I'm not sure that the greater population has.
Would you say something about the shift for you from what to what? Like what has shifted?
The shift has been learning the statement, if you meet one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, to really deeply knowing that and believing it and recognizing that we use that statement with autism, but it applies to every disability, every different ability, every type of neurodivergence, everything that happens within us. No two are alike. And it allows me to look at each student in terms of what can they do. Mm-hmm. And my focus becomes, what can they do? Their diagnosis means very little to me, actually, because I just want to look at what can this student do.
Is there anything like a typical session? Like what kind of thing do you work with autistic folks on?
Working with autistic students is a little bit different than working with a neurotypical student with a physical disability, because there is a higher chance, a higher tendency that there will be behaviors involved that can make the session more challenging sometimes. I can give examples of really simple things. I have a student that I work with, and she absolutely loves acorns. So if we're outside and I choose to work in a space where there are acorns on the ground, I cannot get her attention to do anything. But if I just go to a different part of campus where there are no oak trees, we can practice jump rope. We can practice rhythm and movement skills. But I had to learn that where we go on campus was very important as to how willing to work on skills she would be. And so for each student, it's about finding their motivation, finding their currency.
Mhm.
And the big difference with autistic students is that the behavior can make it really difficult to understand whether or not, and I don't say behavior as a bad or a negative. It just is a thing. We all behave in different ways. So the way that these students behave makes it very challenging to recognize whether or not there is a gross motor delay. And it requires quite a bit of finesse to find whether or not they are not doing the skill because it's uncomfortable to them, they don't want to, or that they actually don't have the skill or the ability, or there's something physically holding them back. Or so with autistic students, I spend a lot more time trying to understand the heart of what is causing the delay.
What I know about autism, and especially perhaps people who are nonverbal or have stretches of being nonverbal, like not wanting to do an exercise or a skill may just be my sock doesn't feel comfortable, right? Or my shoe's on too tight, or like there's a bright light over there and it's completely ruining my ability to, and if the skill you're trying to teach somebody is jumping rope and they won't jump rope, like it's very hard to tell, especially if they're not able to speak, like, okay, well, if you just put the socks on different, they'd be able to jump rope just fine kind of thing. So you mentioned skills. Can we just pause for a sec and talk about like what are the skills that you are trying to help somebody acquire?
So generally, in California, we have the California Physical Education Content Standards. And what those are is a list of knowing and doing skills related to physical education, related to gross motor skills, that we would like students to be able to do per grade level. So it's divided up by grade level. It goes all the way up through 10th grade. And so we're looking at, are students able to meet the grade level standards? And if they are not, what can I do to help them get closer? So the standards give us a general guideline. For a lot of students I work with, they're not going to ever meet those standards, and that's okay. And so what I do is I look at, well, where are they now? And how can I help them improve some skills that will allow them to have more experience?
Could you help me make this less abstract? What would a skill be?
Okay. So let's say throwing and catching.
So throwing a ball?
It could be a beanbag. It could be, we use a variety of different equipment, but let's just say throwing a ball, because this is a skill that allows us to have a reciprocal interaction with a peer or a partner. So if a student is unable to throw a ball or catch a ball, they cannot have that experience with their peers. And in social space, we would like to help them be able to interact with peers. And even if a student is nonverbal, to be able to roll a ball back and forth, throw a ball back and forth, interact with in any game where they're playing reciprocally. So the ball or whatever they're doing is going back and forth, back and forth. It is a way that students can interact and it helps them grow socially.
Mhm.
So that's always a really basic skill I'm starting out with. And I have a lot of really young students where that's literally where we start is can we hand a ball back and forth? Not even throwing and catching, just handing it back and forth. And when we're looking at the social aspects of autism, a lot of times that skill, that reciprocal play, is really, really desirable to help the student engage with the people around them and to be able to be comfortable and successful engaging with the people around them, whether or not they're verbal.
Super interesting. It's actually one of the standard questions that I ask people, but I happen to know your answer, but that means I didn't ask it on the podcast, which is very silly. Are you neurodivergent yourself, or how does neurodivergence show up in your life?
I like that question. So I don't identify as being neurodivergent. However, I really like being around people who are identified as neurodivergent. I might even have a preference for it. And I always refer to my people as my neurospicy people. And I've started saying recently that I don't think I'm neurospicy, but maybe I'm a little neurosparkly.
And how does that show up? Like, how do you have like a perceived difference from non-neurosparkly people? Like, what is the thing that makes you think, oh, actually, there's something interesting happening in my brain?
It is that need to exist outside of the box. One of the things that I love about neurodiverse people is that they exist outside of the box and maybe don't even acknowledge the box in some ways. And as I have shifted my life outside of the box, I find myself at peace. I find myself more content, more comfortable. I feel like I have stepped into a true space for myself that allows me to be authentic. It allows me to truly, freely be who I am. And it feels to me like the society we live in encourages us all to be in the box. And by spending more time with neurodivergent people, I've come to recognize that we can exist outside of that box very successfully, but even possibly better in some way. So I have chosen to live in that space because it's more natural for me. So I don't know that that's neurodivergence, or a neurospiciness, but I feel like there's something about the way that my brain works that says this is a more comfortable space to be, and I recognize this in other people, and that's why those are the people I want in my life. So there's something there that is not open to following the standards, not open to living in the perfect societal bubble.
Right. So it sounds like you're kind of opting in to being, what's the word? You're opting into being nonconformist. And your neurospicy friends, because they literally can't be conformists, have kind of shown you that, oh, actually, this is a different path through life that I maybe would enjoy. Am I hearing that?
Yeah, it does feel. I think there's definitely choice involved in it, and part of it is just really finding my truth and recognizing that this is where I land, and it feels good. I'm in a much better place these days now that I have recognized that and made that choice.
Beautiful. Thank you. Imagine we have a listener who's a parent and they have a kid who is autistic and they're like, I wish there were ways that I could do more like PE skills or what have you at home. Like, what would you recommend somebody starts with?
Let's see. Each human with autism is so completely different. So as a parent, I think the most important thing is to look at who this human being is and look at the things that make them shine a little brighter, the things that light them up a little bit. And it doesn't have to be a lot, just a little bit, just a curiosity, just something that just sparks their interest a tiny bit. and look for the things that do that and involve movement. Because physical education isn't just about all the sports skills that we're familiar with, as much as I may assess for those skills. It is about moving our bodies, and it is about enjoying moving our bodies. So to look at a child and think, how can I get this child to be more active? If they are on the spectrum, if they are autistic, chances are you're going to have the best luck following their lead. And so, what is it? What movements make them happy? When do they smile when they're moving? And use that as your starting point. So, if the things that make them happy are running laps around your house, let's run laps around the house. Let's clear a space. Let's make a track. Let's make a route. Let's time it maybe even and see if they can improve their times. Let's make games out of it. Turn it into a fun thing. If this child loves to run around the house, let's play that game. Let's turn it into a fun game. Let's make it something that is positive, because running around the house feels good to their body.
Okay, so here we are a couple of weeks later, and if we sound completely different, that is because everything is completely different. I set up this really elaborate setup at Darcy's house for recording in person, which is fantastic until we ran out of battery on one of the laptops. We thought we had the rest of the interview, but we lost it. I did a lot of swearing, and I did some... I wasn't very kind with myself. I'm going to be honest about that. But Darcy is a wonderful human being and was open to coming back and finishing the second half of the interview. So forgive the different look and different sound, but here's part 2. Welcome back, Darcy.
Thank you. Glad to be here again.
Yes. So I listened back to the interview that we recorded, or the half that we did record. And something that struck me is that you have a lot of empathy with neurodivergent folks, but we've been friends for a long time. And I know that your brain isn't fully average. And I'm curious if it's worth visiting that briefly so the listeners have a little bit of context for you and where you're coming from.
Sure. I'm happy to share that. Goodness, let's see. To start, I guess about 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis. And it's an autoimmune disorder where your body basically attacks healthy cells, and in this case, in your brain, and it attacks the nerve cells leaving scar tissue in your brain, which slows down the transmission of messages and can affect your body in any way, depending on which nerves have been affected, which areas of your brain have been affected. And so for me, this has been predominantly a cognitive issue where I have processing delays sometimes and short-term memory challenges sometimes. And there was a time where I was having a lot of physical challenges as well.
And so when you say cognitive, for people who don't necessarily fully understand what that means, what does that mean?
So it's just the way that our brains function and think. So our ability to process information. And so with a processing delay, for me, sometimes I need more time to stop and think about things. I need more time to process what I've heard, what I'm thinking about. I really frequently will come back later and have all the information that I didn't have in the moment. So finding the right words. I have so much trouble finding the right words. I struggle with that. Some days I'm really good and I'm like, ooh, I'm wording really well today. And other days I'm like, what words?
I know England so good, yeah. What you're describing, both the language and delayed processing, those are pretty well established symptoms of, or comorbidities at least, of autism.
Yes. So to add to this, just to make it a little more fun, maybe a little more spicy, 14 months later, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I went through chemotherapy, surgery, radiation, surgery. And one of the side effects of chemotherapy, they call it chemo brain. And it essentially has the exact same effect of what I was already having with the MS. processing delays, short-term memory challenges, just general brain fog, slowness, inability to find words. So much of what I already was familiar with. In one sense, the chemo, I say it shut down my MS because I haven't had any of the physical symptoms since. I think it kind of reprogrammed what was going on to some degree. I'm not even sure, but because of the chemo, I still have the same cognitive challenges that I had before, and I now don't know what is tied to what. I have good days and I have not so good days as far as my cognitive functioning goes.
I mean, I don't think generally chemo is recommended as a cure for MS, but here we are.
And I want to qualify this a little bit too, because it's kind of fascinating. So I did the full range of cognitive assessment, which a student who was getting an IEP would actually go through the exact same testing that I went through. But when they do it, they tailor it to your age, your gender, your education level. And so for, at that time, a woman age 45 with a college degree, they compare you to your similar peers, basically. So they use that bell curve to determine if you're in the average range, above average, below average. So in most of the areas, I actually fell within the average range of the bell curve. The processing delays and the short-term memory were lower in there, but overall, I was in the higher end of average. And I came out of there and I said, oh my goodness, if this is average, I now understand what's wrong with our society.
That's dark.
It's terrible. You can cut that from the interview if you want to.
I'm not gonna. That's hilarious. But also, and I know you to be unfiltered, and this is a podcast roughly aimed at autistic people who are also not filtered, so we're good.
Okay, good.
What I'm curious, though, is does that help you feel better empathy for people that you are helping who also have developmental challenges or autism or whatever comes across your path?
Oh, absolutely. The idea that it would take longer to understand something, that you need space, you need time to think about it, to process it. The idea that it's not going to happen instantaneously is very real to me. So to expect other people to do something instantly would be unreasonable. I think it improved my patience. I think it increased my empathy. The short-term memory challenges. If I can't remember things, why would I expect other people to remember things? So I'm happy to repeat. I'm happy to review. I'm happy to go, oh, okay, we're going to practice this for a while until it becomes habit and it can sink in. I think that it did increase my awareness. I think I already had a significant awareness there, but to experience this myself means that that I'm more tuned into it. I'm more aware of it because it's right there in front of me now.
What does that awareness give you? Like, has anything changed about how you work with your students? I guess it's also kind of, there was COVID, there was all sorts of other weird stuff that happened, so maybe it's hard to pinpoint, but if you can think of anything, I'm curious.
Oh, so your comment is spot on. There have been a lot of things. For me, I've been through an incredibly transformational period of time in my life the last 3 years. So not just these diagnoses, not just the treatments I've been through, but I've been doing so much personal growth work. And so it is very difficult to pinpoint what has made the change, but I know that I show up differently in the world compared to how I used to. I know that I am more patient. I have more kindness, love, acceptance. I'm more present. I feel like life has slowed down in a way where I'm able to really watch my students and see what's happening with them, what they need, what their emotional space is that day, and how can I tune in to help them be as successful as possible. And instead of just coming to a session with a student and saying, okay, we're going to work on your goal. This is what we're doing, XYZ. This is what we're doing this week. I go into each one and look at what is my student willing to do today? What are they interested in today? How can I customize and tailor today's lesson to meet their needs in this moment. And it has really actually changed the way that I am teaching. I just can't pinpoint which of all the things that have happened in the last 3 years are the driving force, or if it's just a combination of all of them. We do have state standards for each subject matter. So the California state standards for physical education are content standards that describe what a student should be able to do at each grade level in relation to gross motor skills and knowledge as well. So when a student has an IEP and I assess them, I look at what can they do in relation to those standards, and then I can determine if they are close enough to grade level standards that I can actually work with them on the standards for their grade. Then I'm going to focus on the areas where they show deficiency. So it is customized to what their needs are relating to the standards. If they are more significantly delayed, then I'm going to look at what they can do, and we're just going to build on that. And we're going to do it in relation to the standards, but it's not going to be their specific grade level. So they might be, that might be a student that's in 4th grade, but they can work toward 1st grade standards. Then we're going to go back and we're going to work toward those. So with each student, it is so dependent on what they can do, and I get to write into the IEP, this is what they do, these are the goals I'm going to set for them, and it relates to which standard and which grade level. So by me stepping into an IEP with a student, they aren't necessarily going to be held to their grade level standards for that subject matter, because I've now described which ones they can do, what they need to work on. And that's now my job. That's what I'm doing, is I'm helping them work on those things they weren't able to meet.
Yeah, totally. And so what I'm hearing is that you have a fair amount of experience working with autistic folks professionally. Before we started recording, we talked briefly about so neurodivergence shows up in lots of different ways. And some of that might be somebody being nonverbal or having problems around spatial awareness or whatever. And all of these things seem very relevant to trying to be in a school situation. How do you navigate that?
Oh goodness, that's a great question, because yes, so many. I can go just to today. I have a new student, and he is 4, and he has a lot of energy.
4-year-olds will do that.
Yes, and he is nonverbal, and very, I would say, clearly autistic in the way that he behaves and the way that he interacts. But it's really interesting, because there are little things that he clearly really likes, and other things that he just doesn't even let them affect him. Like, they're not even interesting to him in a way that he wants to acknowledge their existence. So really important to him is holding hands. He loves to hold hands. If he's unsure about something, if he's really comfortable in a situation, he'll be running all around. If somebody walks by that he doesn't vibe well with, he will be next to me holding my hand instantly. If he wanted to walk up this little hill that was grassy, he wanted to hold my hand because it was uneven terrain. Got to the top, it's flat, it's concrete, didn't need my hand anymore. So anytime there's something that he hesitates about, it seems to be very comforting, very reassuring to him to have a hand to hold. And it's really sweet, because he's new to me, we're brand new, but I just feel his little tiny hand come into mine frequently. And I'm like, oh, okay, I gotcha. This little reassurance. And then you can tell he's like, okay, now we're good. Now we're safe. So I felt really honored that he felt safe with me in that moment. And, he's a fun one. He does not interested in in following instructions. But I know that he's curious about the world. So I open up my backpack and I just start bringing things out one at a time. And I have these balls that have texture, they're bumpy. And he was a little bit interested in that, but he threw it. And then I pull out a wiffle ball that has the holes. Not interested in that. Yarn ball, stuck his fingers in it a bit, was like, okay, that's interesting, dropped it. Beach ball. I had a beach ball I had attached to a string so I can hold on to it. And he did hit that one a bunch. He was like bopping it with his hands. I put it down on the ground. He kicked it a couple times. So we had a little interaction there. I was kind of excited about that. But the interest level is like, I think he hit it maybe 5 times, and then he was done. And then I pulled out my bubble wand, because now he'd interacted with me. He'd actually done something I had asked. I had put the ball in front of him, asked him, can you hit the ball? He hit it numerous times. So something that almost every kid loves works as a reward. I pull out the bubble wand, start blowing bubbles, and he just went, oh, his whole face lit up, his eyes got big, and he just tipped his head back and watched them floating by and was enthralled. And so then I blew some more, and I showed him, look, you can pop them. And then he watched me pop a bunch, and then he went chasing after some and popped a bunch of them. And then he was giggling, like you could hear the little sounds he was making, so excited. And then he came back and wanted more, so I did more. And then I put the bubbles away and brought out another toy to see if he would play with it. And he just kept going back and wanted the bubble wand. And so then I can use it. And if we do this, then we can do that. And he totally got it. And so he was willing to engage in another activity that I was offering him, just a little bit. And a lot of times it is that he takes the equipment and throws it, takes the equipment, throws it, takes the equipment, throws it.
Is this equipment that is made to be thrown, or is he taking something that he's not meant to throw and throws it?
Oh, everything I have in my bag is throwable. I've got bean bags, I have yarn balls, I have, I have a variety of, things that can be thrown.
And so what you're describing here, is this you getting to know this? Sorry, I think I talked over you.
Oh, yes.
What you're describing here, is that you getting to know what this kid can do, will do, is able to do, might be able to do? Or is this just you, like what's the science behind what you're trying to do here?
So I'm getting to know what he can do, and I'm finding out what his currency is. What will he work for?
Will throw stuff for bubbles. Got it.
Yes. So he's throwing, and now that is a skill. But what I want him to do is I want him to throw it to me. And I want to be able to catch it and throw it back to him. And I want that reciprocal play. I want that back and forth engagement, because when the students can learn to do the reciprocal play, then there are so many different activities that we can do together, but also that they can do with their peers, with their family members, with anybody. If every time they take the ball and they throw it away, it's really hard to play with them, because it means one person is chasing it everywhere and the other person is standing in place. And so you need that cooperation. And so that reciprocal play goal is really important, and that's usually where I start. So what I'm doing right now is I'm finding out his currency. And so once we get to the point where he can give the ball back to me, or where I can toss it to him or give it to him and have him even not throw it away, that's what I'm working towards. And so every time he does something, like he has a ball in his hand, I say, it's his turn. I use his name. Oh, it's the student's turn. And every time I have it in my hands, I say, it's Miss Darcy's turn. And then it's your turn. It's my turn. It's your turn. But I always use the name. And so the idea is that he's starting to learn that this is a back and forth thing. And so if he learns that when I have the ball, it's my turn, and when he has the ball, it's his turn. Now, when he has the ball and I say, it's my turn, the idea is that then he'll go, oh, she should have the ball because it's her turn. I'll give it back to her. And this is a very, very slow process with some kids. With some kids, they learn it really quickly. But there's so many concepts around trying to learn that reciprocal play. And once we do, we can do so many things.
Can you say a bit more about why, from kind of a... Sorry, I keep speaking over you. I think there might be a little delay. I'm sorry about that. Can you say anything about why reciprocal play is so important? Like, I don't think I fully understand why that's one of the core things that you're trying to teach people.
It plays into so many parts of how we interact with other humans. So this is a human interaction skill. So right now, you and I are having a conversation.
And I keep talking over you. It's great. Yeah. Clearly, I'm not very good at this conversation thing.
I mean, on this example, when you interrupt someone, it would be like taking the ball from them. as opposed to waiting for them to toss it to you. And I'm not coming down on you for interrupting. We do have some little bit of a delay, so it's not an issue. I'm not bothered. But in human interactions, they go back and forth. They go from one person to another, whether it's a conversation, whether it's an activity with an object. The way that we interact with other humans is back and forth. It's reciprocal. So if a child who has autism doesn't understand that concept yet, it is going to be challenging for them as they grow up to play with their peers, to interact with their peers, to interact with adults successfully, to eventually have conversations if they're verbal or become verbal, which some of them do, some don't. Just to understand how humans around them are interacting, they need to understand that give and take, that back and forth. And so from a PE perspective, I have this ability to practice a skill that is really easy for most kids to learn. The idea of giving a ball back and forth. It's really simple, but it is this concept that carries over into the rest of their lives and can help them learn how to interact with other people.
Right. And so you're not doing this because you want everybody to be on the football team. You're doing this because it's an actual life skill that is transferable and helpful.
Absolutely.
And so what if a parent at home goes, hey, how can I practice this at home? Like, where would you start, or what advice would you give to somebody who wants to try some of this out with their own kid?
I would do anything that is back and forth. So you could sit on the floor and roll a ball back and forth. And that's a fun game that a lot of little kids really like. It could be if they like trucks. You could take a truck and roll it to them and they could roll it back to you. If you look at what they like, what is it that they are interested in, and back and forth. Kids love balloons. Balloons are great because you can hit them up in the air and they come down really slowly, and you can take turns. My turn, your turn, my turn, your turn. Balloons are really, really great for kids that have low motor skills because they move so slowly. Anything that you're doing where you can hand them something and they can give it back to you and you can give it back to them. There's also the concept that when you give somebody something, that it isn't gone forever, that it might come back to you. The object permanence is really also important. And this skill, these reciprocal skills, help with that. So it could be anything in your house that you're doing a give and take with.
So this is why you're doing this with bean bags and not with cookies. Because if you give a cookie to a 4-year-old, you're not getting it back.
Yeah. But you could do this with food. You could have some cookies. You could have some goldfish. Lots of kids love the goldfish. And say, oh, here, you get a goldfish. And then they have some in a cup maybe and say, can I have a goldfish? And then have them give you one. And would you like a goldfish? Here, I'm going to give you a goldfish. Now, can I have a goldfish? Give me one. And so you can hand anything back and forth. So if food is a motivator for them, you can use food. And if trucks are a motivator, use trucks. And if it's a ball that they love, if it's maybe a little toy animal and the little animal runs over to them and then they make it run back. You know, what is it that they love? What is it they love to play with? What object is their favorite thing? And create a back and forth game out of it where they know that they're going to get it back. You're not taking it from them. This is a way that we play together. This is interaction together.
Where do you evolve from there? Say we figured out, I give you the ball, I get the ball back. I throw you the ball, you throw the ball back. And there's enough of hey, this is interesting for a while, but what's the next step onwards from that ball goes back and forth game?
So many things. Okay, so if we can play reciprocal play, if we can make a ball go back and forth, now we're going to learn about different ways to do it. So we're going to learn about underhand tossing and overhand throws, because those are the two primary throwing skills that I focus on. And so now we're going to learn about form, about the arm swing, about the step in opposition. So there are all these little steps that we're going to add in to start creating accuracy and increasing distance. And I have endless games that I can play with these. So, favorite is I put hula hoops out on the ground, and I put a little cone. I have these lightweight plastic cones. I put a cone in each hoop, and then a line about 6 to 10 feet back, depending on the kid. And they practice underhand tossing, and they get points for matching colors and for hitting the cones. So if they have a red beanbag and they throw it into a red hula hoop, they'll get more points than if they threw it into the wrong colored one. So we play with colors, we play with counting because we add up the points. They get more points if they hit the cone. They get even more points if they knock the cone over. And we have all kinds of games that we play. And so they don't even realize sometimes that they're learning a skill because they get into the games and the colors and the fun. And
you're tricking them into learning. Dastardly human. From there, my imagining goes to throwing the ball with a bounce, bouncing the ball off a wall and catching it, and all that kind of stuff. And, I'm an avid juggler. So from there, the sky's the limit kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. We get silly sometimes if they're like just bored with usual throwing and catching. I'll do things where like we reach under the leg and toss it up in the air, or we do beanbag balancing games, and and then we switch up different kinds of equipment, and we do two-hand throws, like with basketball or a playground ball. We're doing bouncing, and a lot of the kids love to take it really high, two hands, and throw it down as hard as they can and make it bounce high. That's a skill, and it's increasing strength in their arms and core.
Do you ever do things like water balloon toss or egg toss?
I do not.
Because you've learned your lesson?
Because yes.
I mean, those things I remember from being a kid where there was actually some risk involved with catching and throwing, and that was really fun for me. I did have a note that I wanted to talk to you about something we did talk about last session and then failed to record, which is interoception. Can you say a little bit about what that is and how that is related to autism?
Oh, yes. One of my favorite subjects. So I'm going to start with the one that people commonly know, which is proprioception. And that's generally described as how we perceive our bodies in the environment. So if you come up to a staircase and you raise your leg up and you plant your foot on the step and you line it up just right and you're able to walk up the steps, proprioception is responsible for that. It's being able to recognize where your foot is in space in order to place it on that next step accurately. I think that's a really easy example of it.
Yeah.
So interoception is different because it's the perception of our internal body functionings. So these are automatic functions. So sometimes you can feel your heart beating. That's interoception. You're perceiving the sensation of the beat of your heart, of the pulse, the pump of your blood. And sometimes, especially when you're exercising, you can feel that really easily. And you can feel things happening inside your body as your body functions. You feel yourself digesting sometimes. You feel bubbles in there. But the way that it comes up for me in the work that I do, and I've been really fascinated by this. There are very few studies on it, but just enough for me to have gone down a rabbit hole. And I have a pretty good idea of what it is that I'm looking for and trying to understand. And what I see is that when we exercise, we use our muscles and we challenge our muscles. And by challenging our muscles, they get stronger. It tells our body, we need more strength here. So the muscle fibers are able to grow and to strengthen. So most people, I shouldn't even say most people, a lot of people who exercise regularly, and we can correct that, a lot of people who exercise regularly feel the sensation of their muscles being challenged. And their brain says, oh, this is good. This means progress. I'm going to get stronger because I feel that. And yeah, it hurts, and yeah, I have muscle soreness, but it's okay because I'm going to get stronger, and the next time I do that exercise, it's going to be easier. So that's interoception, where we're feeling the muscles work, we're feeling them get challenged. So imagine you're doing push-ups and they're really hard and you're challenging your body and you're telling yourself, okay, I'm going to do one more. And I know it's going to hurt, but that's okay, because if I do one more, it's going to help me get stronger. But you're able to say, but that's okay, when you feel that discomfort. I have a lot of students who are not able to say that. And I've come to see patterns in it where the reactions that they have look like a fight or flight response. So they get to a point in an exercise where there's a physical challenge and they sense that internally. Their interoception says, the message goes to their brain, this hurts, this is uncomfortable. And instead of saying, if I do a little more, I'll get better at it, or even I could just do a little more and it's safe, they freeze, they stop, and they don't want to do any more. And they don't want to do it again next time. There's no talking them into it. Their brain is saying, that pain is not safe, and I am not going to continue this exercise. And so it becomes really challenging to help them progress when it comes to physical fitness. And a big part of PE involves fitness components.
Right.
And so I'm struggling right now because I really believe that it's the interoception that is like cutting them off and saying, no, this is not safe. You need to stop or get out of here. And I know that it is safe, but I don't know how to help them understand that it's safe. And I'm finding that that is very common in students with autism diagnosis and a lot of other neurodivergence. And I don't have an answer to it yet, but it is something that comes up often enough that I've seen the pattern there. I've done all the reading I can possibly find, which is not very much. And I really actually believe that that the experience they're having is causing the fight or flight response, and they're not going to easily make progress when they have that going on because it's not safe to them. Their body's telling their brain, this is not safe. And here I am saying, yes, this is safe, you should do more. And they're like, I don't know who to believe here.
That plays into a lot of things that people, like teachers are trying to get kids to do things they don't want to do all the time, right? Yeah. And most of the time that doesn't cause the body to go into a fight or flight. I think there's a really fascinating thing about that. Like, who do you trust? And it becomes a, hey lady, you're my teacher, but I don't know you. Like, I don't know if you really have my best intentions at heart. You're a teacher. Other teachers make me do stuff I don't want to do. And, you know, I can totally see why that's fascinating. I also think that you have a research paper to write there.
Oh my gosh. That would be a big project. Well, so there's an interesting thing. I have a high school student who I believe she is autistic, and she and I have developed a really, really good rapport. And I'm finding that there are things that she's not comfortable doing, but she will do them with me, or she'll say, I'll try with me. And she can have, I had this happen recently, an amazing class, PE class. I'm there the whole time. I had to leave 10 minutes before the end of class. So there was just a few activities. I talked to her paraeducator. This is what she's going to do. This is how you're going to do this activity. She was on board. Teacher was on board. Everyone was good. I left. Everything blew up. And I'm starting to wonder if the rapport that I've built with her is helping her feel safe doing these activities. But when I'm not there, that she shifts back into this is not safe anymore mode. And then she reacts, and then it becomes challenging. And that's another one I'm trying to understand, because when I'm there, I have no problems. Right. When I'm not there, many problems.
Many.
many problems. And I don't want her to depend on me. She's going to have to learn how to make these choices on her own and how to use her words and advocate for herself. But sometimes that ends up being part of my job, is helping these students learn how to advocate for themselves. Because I can tell her, hey, you know what? It's totally reasonable that you don't want to do that and that it doesn't feel okay for you. But if you're not going to, you need to tell your paraeducator and your teacher that you're not, and you probably need to tell them why. And you can't just say, no, I'm not doing this, and get mad and have a reaction, because now you're having a behavior that's a challenge. And so we have to find the balance. It's okay if you can't do this activity, but you have to use your words. And that's one of the big challenges, because that also is difficult. And so then we come back around full circle to trying to make everybody fit into the same perfect box, do everything the same way, to meet the needs, to meet the standards that we have, which are not inclusive. Many times when I look around and I see that picture, I don't know if you've ever seen it, where there's like a whole bunch of different animals standing around by a table, and the teacher's sitting there and says, okay, your final exam is to climb the tree. And the elephant and the turtle are like, what the hell? You know, I still feel like our education system is kind of in that space. And especially when it comes to people who are considered more neurodivergent and who don't meet with our current norms, our system is still based on standards and norms, and that does not meet everybody's needs. And it can be very challenging for a lot of students.
It's a famous quote, isn't it? If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree.
And now you're creating a system of failure. And if you tell the fish, these are the standards, these are what everyone needs to be able to do, that fish is going to feel like a failure. And I don't want any of my students to feel like a failure. So I think one of my biggest focuses is how to help them be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. What is something you wish people knew about autism?
I wish people would see people with autism as beautiful, creative minds who just experience the world differently than they do. And I have experienced so many incredible conversations and experiences with students who just see things in a way that open my mind, where I go, oh my gosh, I want to see the world that way. I want to see the beauty and the joy and the colors and notice the things the way they notice them, and not just be following the norm. And I wish that everybody could see it that way. I wish that everybody could experience it that way.
I love that. Thank you. Can you tell me a story of a time that you were deeply seen and loved that surprised you?
Yes. A little over 3 years ago, I met you, and there were a lot of challenges going on in my life. Not too long after I separated from a 22-year relationship and was trying to find my way as an independent, autonomous woman, single woman for the first time in my whole life. And it was very emotional. It was very challenging. And I struggled a lot with all the tears that flowed. And the moment that you said to me, all of you is welcome here, was life-changing to me. Because I don't think anybody had ever said it to me like that. And I don't think that as an adult, I didn't feel that way, and I didn't believe that. And I hadn't since I was a child. And to have an adult say that to me and to recognize that all of me was welcome was a pivotal, life-changing moment for me. And the idea that I really could all be welcome was more seen than I had felt as an adult.
The other thing I know about you is that you are now surrounding yourself with people who welcome all of you. And I'm pleased to have been one of the first, and I'm excited to know that I definitely wasn't the last.
Nope. Definitely gotten the ball rolling on that for me. Gave me some ideas of where I could go, what my options were. And I ran with it. And yeah, definitely the first, but not the last.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I really appreciate you as a friend and now as a interviewee for this. It's been an absolute delight.
It's so much fun, and I really appreciate you letting me do this, because this was a new experience for me, and that's something I'm doing, trying to have new experiences. So thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the podcast, and thank you for being patient with our technical difficulties. You can find us on TikTok on Autistic FM, on Instagram at autistic_FM, and on the web at autistic.fm. This podcast is produced and hosted by me, Haje Kamps. If you know anybody who would be a great guest on this podcast, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You can email us on hello@autistic.fm or reach out via the socials. See you next week.